Hello and welcome to the CEO Show with the #1 ranking CEO magazine worldwide. I'm your host, Nick Vaidya. Today we have as our guest an incredibly successful executive, Tiger N.V. Tyagarajan, the CEO of Genpact. Started in 1997, today Genpact boasts 62,000 employees and Tiger has played an instrumental role right since the inception. Now, despite our 2 pre-flight checks, we had a little bit of difficulty, so we are going to be running on our backup system. Nonetheless, what you will hear is going to be worth its weight in gold, and I know that. So let us welcome Tiger to our show. A very warm welcome to you, Tiger. That takes me to the second question, actually, that you're talking about. I wanted to point out. So, there is a shortage of talent, even in analytics, particularly analytics. But then there's the domain expertise that these analysts need to have. It's not just the ability to crunch numbers. Does that change the dynamics that you're seeing right now? Obviously your 70 centers is probably a result of not finding enough people at certain locations. But moving forward, when you talk of mid-market, I mean, you are helping the large Fortune 500 and the Fortune 2000 companies. But still, you've got a lot of ways. The industry as such has a long way to go. We've probably touched maybe 30-40% of them. And that's a number I'm just picking up based on my understanding of things. But there's a whole way to go. And then there's the mid-market, which is much bigger. So how do you see, what do you see going forward in terms of how to attack talent? And it's almost like you said the war for talent is there, and there's the equivalence of 25-year-old scotch. There's a big shortage. You can't make it quickly.
Yeah. No, so the only option is to make talent. You're right. So going back, there is a shortage of single malts. I mean, there is a limitation. So what do? If you can find a way to make single malts, that's the answer. Now, obviously, there is no such thing as find a way to make single malts. So what we focus a lot of our attention on is making talent, and making talent mean taking great raw material and teaching people the specific domain that is needed to be successful over time. So we have people who join us, who joined us 15 years back, 10 years back, as someone who does very simple accounting work or very simple financial services work. And today they are CPAs. They can close the books of clients. They can do very complex financial analysis. They can do hedging strategies. They've learned that over the years. We provide the avenue to teach them. Why do we do that? Because we think that prepares them for the next role. As we prepare them for the next role, it allows our client to give us the next piece of work, which is complex, because they know we have the raw material whom we have prepared to deal with that. So that helps me grow revenue. That person doesn't leave. So therefore, I drive retention up. So it becomes a nice virtuous cycle. So how do you deal with the war for talent? I think the war for talent is dealt with across the globe by corporations and private sector actually realizing that it's their job to teach people, because teaching no longer is going to be something that you go to school and college 10, 20 years and then use that to produce for the next 40 years. Because nothing that you learn in college lasts more than 1 or 2 years these days. Everything changes. Right. So by the time you're into your second and third year, things that you learned in college are all old. That's the way the world is today. So what do you have to do? What corporations have to do is constantly teach people. So rejuvenation and teaching becomes critical. Employees have to understand that they have to constantly learn. There's no option. Otherwise, they'll get stale. Governments have to understand that between them and the corporations, they have to create the capital and the expense to be able to take people out, to make them learn and then bring them back into the workforce. So this notion of 20 years learning, 40 years production, 40 years retirement, I think is going to go away. I think it's going to be, some learning foundation. Maybe it is 20 years, but then it is 3 years of working and production, 3 months of learning. 3 years of working, 3 months of learning, continuous. So you go through life constantly learning. And therefore, organizations have to be willing to let go for 3 months. They have to create much more flexibility. So there's a whole change that I think the combination of fast technology changes, therefore requiring big learning and global talent shortage, is going to create. Organizations such as ours and other organizations like us that have to deal with it in any case because of the nature of our business, I think are very well positioned because that's become our ecosystem. But I think every corporation, irrespective of the industry they're in, has to do this.
This is very interesting and very nice to hear from you say that. I always talk about education is not an event. My doctoral work was in educational psychology, by the way. So I've done a lot of different variety of things. And it is true, in the current dynamic environment, even in the past, but more so now, because so much is changing all the time. It's not just agile ABC, it's also agile man force or resources. You've got to get the agility in there to constantly be learning and growing. Companies like McKinsey and Google, they have 20% of, or whatever the numbers may be, of their time allocated to constantly keep on learning. In fact, McKinsey has a process where at the end of the day, you need to think through and become cognizant of, okay, what did I learn today and what do I need to do next? So I think that mentality has to change across the world, as not just the US or any one particular place. So I really appreciate it. And that is a great segue into one other set of questions. I know you come from your Unilever background, which has a great program for mentorship and teaching. I had a great conversation with Bindi Banga, whom you may or may not have come in contact with. And he talked about how much he learned there. So you come from there. How did the education there, what kind of education did you get there? How has it influenced your ability to succeed the way you have done here?
That goes back 25 plus years. So that was the first set of 6-7 years in corporate life that I spent. What I really learned there, because the role that I had, I was in sales and I was in consumer product sales. So I was managing a set of salespeople out in the field, distribution, logistics, and a whole set of stockists and retailers and distributors. And what it taught me was, as a 23-year-old, 24-year-old, which is when I started doing it, how do you manage the aspirations of a 50-year-old? How do you motivate a 50-year-old? How do you drive human behavior to aspire to get to places that otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to go to? And how do you do that without making them feel as though they don't know it because they've done it for 30 years and they're more, they're more experienced in those areas than you are? How do you make them turn around and teach you, even though you are actually their boss? So it's a weird. So and then of course, learning behaviors out in the field in different states, because I was doing this in India, in different cities and states in India, each of them with a different culture, different language. So the ability to manage that diversity, to manage to plans and numbers, to drive motivation in large teams, to get them to go where you think they should go. At the same time, realizing that actually they know more than you and making them realize that actually they should be teaching you. Those are kind of things I learned there. I would never ever give up those first 6 years of what I learned there.
That is really neat. And interpersonal skills, and not just it, these are not interpersonal skills. This is way beyond interpersonal skills. It gets to the core of getting things done, how to make things happen. And it involves a complex set of issues being taken into consideration in a given single moment. I realize that because I started.
I'll give you one anecdote, which I still, and I think it's deep inside. So I use it in different conceptual frameworks the same way. So I used to have 30 salespeople across, a large territory, let's say state of New York, that kind of state. This was actually the state of Maharashtra, if you remember, Maharashtra, Bombay, etc. And there, every day, these salespeople would go and sell products of the company to a bunch of retailers, mom and pop shops, chains, etc. At the end of the day, they're supposed to prepare a daily sales report which says exactly who they sold what to, etc. And therefore, what is the total sales for the month that they've done, and what is the target, etc. I realized that it's important for them to document that, not because it's important for them to document anything, because in the end, the sales will get recorded because someone will record the sales. It's important for them to actually figure out what they sold and then write down, I sold X and I'm only 20% of my way to the target and it's half the month done. When you see that, it drives a different behavior. So what did I do? I basically told everyone that 24 hours, and those days there were no emails, there was nothing. I said 24 hours after the end of a day, the daily sales report should reach where I was, which was headquarters of that region, should reach my desk. So I would get 30 of these every day, dating back to the day before yesterday. I would take 29 of them and throw them into the dustbin without even looking at them. I would pick one random one. I would pick one random item that was either great or bad, and I would send out a note to all 30 people saying, hey, John Smith did this happened, wonderful, da 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 da. So they thought I was reading everything. So they would diligently write it. In the bargain, they actually understood exactly how far they are from target, what they're missing. So it drove motivation. I think it drove motivation. Our performance went up just by doing that.
This is an amazing example. It goes to the same thing, process. Even human behavior is full of processes, and we are hardwired oftentimes, unless we actively go and change our hardwiring, we follow the process. We react the same way to 999 to 70% sales. And these things work their natural way. There's a book called Predictable Irrationality, and they talk about these same issues. I think the process works everywhere, and when we attack the process, that's how the big behavioral changes take place. It's a great example, and I remember those days because I used to work for Walters in the Vidarbha region back when I started my career, later than you, of course, and we used to get these pink slips and the blue slips. They won't even make photocopies. It was a carbon copy. So I know exactly what you mean.
Right.
Tiger, thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed talking with you.
Nick, this is really wonderful. And I really apologize for that video conference thing, but this worked really well.